Every human and living being has a past. No one is exempt from having one. And our past really shapes not only how we turn out to become as individuals, but also how we show up in the world in order to function, and not just function, but also be productive. Another major area in which our past really impacts our lives is the way in which we communicate or show up, whether it's with friends, family members, colleagues, and in the case of healthcare providers, our patients. This is an often overlooked area by healthcare providers, and they don't really sort of go really deep into why that might be the case and what aspects of their past impact the way in which they are communicating with and relating to their patients. So I'm going to cover a lot more of this concept in this video, so come with me and check it all out. Welcome to my channel, everybody. For those who don't know me, my name is Shweta. I'm the founder of Healthy Dynamics. We are a coaching practice that helps English as a second language healthcare providers improve their English fluency and language and communication skills in order for them to be better communicators with their patients, be able to impact them in a more positive way, be more influential, basically show up with more empathy, compassion, listen actively, and really make a difference in the lives of their patients. So, like I mentioned in the very beginning of the video, apologies, that's the Australian magpie making that noise, and my dog is right there trying to attack the magpie. It's one of his favorite things to do. So anyway, and I decided to actually film outside today because it's one of the very few days this winter when we've had really good sunshine, and I just thought let's just switch up things a little bit. And we did a little bit of yard work and also the washing, so as you can see the laundry is being dried up right over here. Anyway, so apologies for the noise that's being made by the magpie. Hello. So we'll just get straight into it. Now, as I mentioned in the very beginning of the video, our past has a significant impact on the way in which we show up and communicate. So our past experiences, be it positive, negative, traumatic, empowering, whatever they may be, they really sort of set the foundation for which we actually, not only what we say, but how we say it, the presence that we have, how confident or otherwise we are, how charismatic or otherwise we are. Our past, and not just the past, but it's a huge reason that plays a part into the way in which we communicate. Now, on my website, which is going to be out very shortly, there is a quiz that actually mentions, if the link is available, I'll leave it over here or in the description box, that actually is my opt-in freebie that tells people what their default communication persona is. And that's what I mean when I say that our past actually shapes this very default communication persona that every single human or individual has, including healthcare providers. So in this video in more detail, I wanted to cover 4 key factors in which our past or aspects of our past may, or in some respects, influence the way in which we communicate, show up, and relate with others. So let's get straight into it. The number one factor is your upbringing and your family dynamics. So if, say, you have grown up in a household where the age-old belief that children should be seen and not heard, that's what your parents reinforced at you, that may really impact your way in the way in which you might advocate for yourself. You may be comfortable or otherwise with saying no, with setting boundaries, being assertive, standing up for yourself, all these factors that can play a part. Similarly, if you have a more authoritarian sort of regime in the family where the older, particularly the male family members or the female family members who are older than you, whether it's your mother, father, auntie, uncle, grandparents, if they have more of an authoritative as opposed to authoritarian hold on you as a child, that is going to impact the way in which that you advocate and also really stick up for yourselves. I'll give you an example of one of my former clients, and she at the time was working in the hospitality industry. Now, we all know hospitality industry is extremely stressful, high pressure, and really brutal. A couple of my really close child-free friends actually are hospitality workers as well, so I know this. And because, also the fact that she was came here as an immigrant, people really started to take advantage of her. People who used to work with her, rather. So they would, take advantage of her, give her, really brutal shifts, get her to do things that, that were really outside of the scope of work that she's paid to do. And she came to me because she was like, I really don't know how to speak my mind and tell these people to, and also really enforce boundaries. And the more we sort of looked into her past and her childhood, this is what I uncovered, that she grew up in a home environment that was very, very authoritative. So both her parents were, they were like, we are always right. You do as you are told by us. You never backchat to us. We are always right. And so, any kind of talking back or opposition or defiance is just completely not acceptable, and there will be consequences and punishment for that. And that's a huge reason why she really, when we put two and two together, she understood that this is why, when it comes to dealing with an authority figure, back in the day it was her parents, and now it is her employer, that's where she is struggling to really stand up for herself, make sure that she's protected, make sure that also, she's heard, she's respected, her time is respected, her boundaries are not crossed. That's where the problem was. And then we obviously went on and came up with some things that, how we can really, what to say and how to say it. How it basically sort of helped her become a much more assertive and confident communicator. Even though she was not in healthcare, it really did the world of good for her. So that's just one of the examples in which your past can really impact the way in which you communicate. Now, this leads very well into the second factor, which is the impact of trauma that you can have. Now, trauma is a very, very loaded, massive concept, and I do not have the time or space to go into it in too much detail. So, and, because the definition of trauma is different for everybody. I've done an entire video on the impact of trauma on my interview with Margaret Bennett. Again, I can leave that over here so you can check that out. So when you have experienced some kind of a trauma in your life, whether it's from your childhood, from your parents, or any kind of an experience in your childhood, that is going to really impact the way in which you communicate and relate in different ways. So it might cause you to become more suspicious. It might cause you to not open up or be very trusting of strangers. And your guard might be up. You might get very defensive because of the experience that you have had in your past, where you really have to protect yourself and not get hurt or not get harmed in some way. And for example, I can think of people, not myself included, who in the past have really been bullied in a lot of workplaces. Bullying is a huge source of trauma that people experience, and bullying doesn't just happen in high school or in primary school. It happens to people across all walks of life. The workplace is a huge place where bullying happens, and I myself have been the victim. And that's why now when it comes to going into a workplace, I am quite defensive. I'm always on guard. I'm always on watch, going, okay, what is going to happen? Well, what if I make a mistake? The way I'm dressed, the way in which I'm showing up, if I'm being myself, is that going to be used against me? Because of that past experience, which, even though every one of us can try as much as we can to heal from that, some of that will always leave, like a lasting impression in our lives, not in a good way, I admit. So these are if you have some sort of trauma from your past, this can definitely impact the way in which you can sort of relate to, communicate with, and show up for your patients. And if you see that interview that I did with Margaret, the challenge really arises when your trauma or your source of trauma clashes with the one that your patients or your clients have, or that might be completely different, or so you guys may be feeding off each other. And Margaret looks into factors in which, because she works with trauma patients and also clinicians whose clients are trauma patients, how that can be managed. So do definitely go and check that out for some solutions. Now, how to manage all these factors, how to sort of overcome them, that is going to be a factor for a separate video, which I'm not going to cover at this point. But I am going to move on to the very next factor, which is the cultural beliefs that people come from in different cultures. And those beliefs can be toxic, disempowering, empowering, or also limiting in many ways. Now, I can give myself as an example. So the culture that I grew up in, the Indian culture, is not only very sexist and there's a lot of patriarchy and misogyny, but it's also severely toxic in many ways. And I remember doing a podcast episode on this last year with one of my friends, and who's a podcast host, Jennifer. So I'm going to leave that over here. Her podcast is called Leaving Toxic. Absolutely amazing. And even though she talks about toxic relationships, I went on there and talked about how toxic the Indian culture is. So because I was raised, even though my parents were very progressive, relatively more progressive and open-minded compared to most Indian parents, it did really mess me up in the way in which I viewed a lot of things. For example, both my parents are absolutely massively career-driven and workaholics, and so for me, that's what I got instilled into me. That for me to be taken seriously, me to get any respect, any validation, any kind of recognition from others, I have to be a workaholic. I have to have a stack of degrees under my belt. I have to climb up the corporate ladder. And also, it also gave me a very messed up belief about what money is and the role it plays in our lives. And even though my parents have always been very privileged and very well-to-do, how it impacted my relationship with money. And not just that, I remember in my past videos I have mentioned that how I was a very shy and reserved kid, and it was because again, I was raised with the notion that your parents, I'm not going to say this culture is family oriented, it's very parent oriented. So they are the authority figures. So what they say goes, and you do not say or do anything to displease them or make sure that they lose their honor. That actually made me very, very reserved and shy as a child, because I did not want to upset or disappoint my parents. I ended up doing just that in my later years, but that's a story for another time. But yeah, like I said, your cultural beliefs, depending on what culture you've been brought up in, can really be disempowering for you, and it sort of gets imprinted into your head that if you say this or do this, the community as a whole is going to be not very happy, and they'll disown you. So they'll say, use a lot of really big fear tactics in order to sort of hammer that in. And finally, a big factor that is going to impact the way in which you communicate is external experiences that are outside of our family and our childhood and things like that. So like I mentioned, it could be when you faced bullying in the workplace, if you worked in a toxic work environment, if you faced bullying in your school days, in primary or high school, if your teachers never believed in you and always put you down and ridiculed you or made fun of you. All of that is going to impact the way in which you feel about yourself, and that will unconsciously manifest in the way in which you communicate and relate with others. So these are just some generic factors that I thought I would cover in this video that is going to impact, or does impact inevitably, the way in which you relate and connect with others. In one of the future videos, I will talk about how to break all of these patterns and all these beliefs, and a lot of my coaching does actually cover that. And that's why one of my very foundational modules in my standalone coaching program is about self-awareness, because a lot of us don't really pay too much attention to it, and how that has led us to where we are at the moment. So that is just something for you to consider and cover. And obviously, if you do want to check out more of my videos, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and also like this video if you did genuinely like it. And there is also the link to my website, which I'll post in the next video, the video after, where you can book a discovery call with me or strategy call with me to see if we're going to be a good fit to work together in order for you to, as a healthcare provider, improve your language and communication skills. So thank you very much for your time, attention, and presence, engagement, and I will see you next week. Thank you.